We're starting the new book.
Yeah.
The fourth of the fifth books of the Torah, Parshas BaMidbar, in the book of BaMidbar. Right? We call it the book of BaMidbar, which means in the desert, because that's really the first unique word in the beginning of the Parsha. The non-Jewish world calls it the book of Numbers, and that's because there is so much counting in this book, where the Jews have a census. And in general, a census in Jewish tradition is not considered a positive thing. You'll see they do it here, but really we're only supposed to do it when we're actually commanded to do it, right? When God says to do it. And the idea is that by counting Jews, we are making them finite. We're saying that each person is a one, a two, a number, right? A physical, finite number. And the Torah wants us to understand that people, in our case Jews, are not finite, they're infinite. That not that we live forever, but that we have infinite capabilities. Right? Every person has a certain intelligence level, emotional intelligence level, all different types of things, gifts. Someone's good with numbers, another person can sing, another person's good with people. Everyone's got different things that they have that's good. Some people have trouble in other areas. And that's a description of who we are. But we believe that if a person tries hard enough, they can change pretty much anything about them. That if you get angry easily, right, you don't have to say, that's just how I am, I get angry easily. Don't take it seriously. Right? But you can actually change it. You say, I still have the first dollar I ever made. Right? I'm not so easy with money. So then people can change that. They can become more easier. Not necessarily do they give it all away, but they can change. People have that ability. That's a Jewish belief. That's not a common belief in the world. The belief in the world is a leopard can't change his spots. You can't teach an old dog new tricks. Right? You are what you are, and that's it. Mm-hmm. And we say that's not true. So that's a symbol of being infinite, that you have a certain level of intelligence. Well, if you work hard enough, you can affect it. If you have certain physical abilities, if you work hard, you can beat them, you can accomplish them. Whatever it is, right? Within certain physical restraints, you can't do things that are physically impossible, but you can do things that you'd think might be, like for a person to be able to theoretically raise their IQ. They might not show it on the test, but they can work on themselves. That affects their mind and their memory and their abilities to understand, and they can grow with that. People can increase their ability to lift weights. They want to be, they have a job that's physical. They can deal with it. A person has certain genetic problems that causes them, various sicknesses. You can fight them, and you can do something about it and make it so that they don't affect you, right? So that's one of the ideas behind why we don't take a census, because you're counting and saying there's 100 people here. There's 100 doctors here. There's 100 people with an IQ of 105 here, right? That kind of thing means that they're finite. They are where they are, and they're not changing. Right? We say that it's not the case, right? That we are people who can become anything. And the truth is, it's not just us. It's every human has that ability. It's just that most of the humans don't believe they have that ability. That's the real difference.
Rabbi, is it only on Shabbos? Or, I know that there's this thing of when they're counting, they say, not one, not two, not three, not four.
Right, well, that's sort of a funny way of not counting for the same idea, because you're not supposed to count. You also have like certain pasuk, right, that we use that has 10 words. So if you say the pasuk, one word, looking at each person, you know if you have a minion or not, right, instead of counting 10. The world doesn't fall apart if you count. The idea is that we're not really supposed to do it because it's sending a message, right? There's 10 of these in the room, 10 disabled people here. Right? Well, they're not necessarily disabled. Some of them can fix it. Some of them can change it. Some can do different things, right? So that's why we don't do it, right? So that's the one of the messages that we see. And then here in the Torah, it tells us there are times when you need to count. You have to know how many people are coming to your wedding, otherwise you're not going to have enough seats, right? You have to know how many people are going to be at a certain thing. You have to be prepared for it. So they needed to know how many people are in different tribes, how many people have different roles, and so forth. So there are times when this needs to be counted because you have to have that. But you don't do it without the will of God. And the times that it's happened, where they did count in Jewish history without the will of God, certainly in post-biblical times, like in prophetic era, people had plagues. God caused plagues that people died because He doesn't want us to do this. He doesn't want us to sit around and counting people like dollars. Okay, so the book in the Parsha begins, Vayidaber Hashem el Moshe, right? That's pretty straightforward. But then it tells us where are they, just like we had before in Parshas Bahar. It tells us here, BaMidbar Sinai, they are in the desert of Sinai, Be'oel Moed, in the meeting tent, right, in the Mishkan, Be'echad L'chodesh, on the first day of the month, Hasheni, of the second month, B'shana Hashenis, in the second year, let's say some Mitzrayim, that they came out of Egypt, right? So, right, here they are on the first day of the second month, the first month, right, of the second year from when they came out of Egypt, right? And we know that when it comes to months start with the month of Nisan, right? That was the month of Pesach, and then you've got the month after Nisan. That's the month they're talking about, and it was the first day of that month. The second year means that this is the second time we've gotten to that month since they left Egypt. Okay, so it's telling us where they are and when it is. And it says, Su'u es rosh kol edas b'nei Yisrael. Here now it says you should count every member of the Jewish people, the mishpachosam, according to their families, leves avosam, according to their father's home. Now, the first odd thing is su'u. The first word there, su'u. You should. I said it means to count. Probably here it says take a census. Su'u really means to lift up. Right? Then naso is that one who's above, like a prince is a king is a nasi. Right? He's the one who's above everyone. So here it's saying su'u, lift up the heads of every person. Why? When you lift up a person's head, there was a way of counting them. Right? You over there, yeah, 1, you 2, you 3, right? Lift up their heads. But it also alludes to what I said, which is you don't just count people. You have to let people understand that even when you do count them, that they have the ability to rise up. Right? They have the ability to become greater. So it uses the word for rising up instead of the word for counting. Right? So you should do a census on all of them according, as it says, right? It says here, according to their families and to their father's household. But misbar shemos, right? The number of names, kol zachar legulasam. Every male according to their head count. Now, gulgulasam, right, means to the head count. It comes from gugal is a skull. It means a head, right? So you're counting heads. So it doesn't mean heads without bodies. Of course, it means you're counting people, right? So here God is telling us that you have to do a census. Ben esrim shana b'mala. So the first thing is they're telling you that it's men. We're counting men. We're counting men by their family. We're counting them by their tribe. And in order to count them, they have to be 20 years or older. And why 20? So the Torah says, Kol yotzei tzava b'Yisrael tifkedu osam litzivosam. It says anyone who is 20 years old, which means that they're old enough to be in the army, you should count them, right, in such a manner. So what is it really saying to us is that it's not that they want to count soldiers. They're saying that the age of 20 is the age that you can go to the army. And the age that you go to the army is the age that you start to become an independent entity, a person of their own, so that they should be counted as an individual. Now, at this point, they're only counting men, because women didn't go to the army, of course, and they're counting them according to their father's household. But we'll see more detail later about counting. And they're giving us an idea of how many people are in each tribe. Now, the fact is that at the age of 20 is when the age of a person is, at that point, they're counted because they can go to the army. But going to the army really means that they are now responsible to the community. That is, what does a person do when he goes to the army? He's putting his life on the line to save his people, right? The people that I'm fighting for. So that means that he is bound, he's responsible to do something for his community. He's doing it not just for himself, he's doing it for others. He'll die to save the life of somebody else, to save the life of this people. So It means that in every way, a person is now accountable for what they do, and they're expected to participate in communal activities. So below the age of 20, even though they're considered an adult from bar mitzvah and bas mitzvah, but below the age of 20, they're not expected to participate in the same way, and above they are. Right? So from that point, they are. That teaches us a number of things. First is, when we say that a bar mitzvah boy, for instance, and a bar mitzvah is a man, I think we all know that you look at him, he's not a man. He doesn't look like a man. He doesn't have, his chest hasn't broadened, his voice hasn't deepened, he doesn't start to have body hair, maybe a little, but in general, they're just beginning adolescence, right? They're not, a 13-year-old boy and a 12-year-old girl are not adults, right? They don't even look like full adults. So what it's really saying to us is that at that age is the beginning of adulthood. That is, they're beginning the path towards adulthood. When do they get to it fully? At their 20th year.
And yet when the father says the prayer over the bar mitzvah boy, doesn't it mean that I don't have a responsibility for you anymore?
It means I don't have a responsibility for you, that if you sin, it's on your head. If you do a mitzvah, it's on your head. Right? That, as I say, that up until now, if you would go and hurt someone, right, I'm responsible for that. I'm going to get punished for that because I should have watched you, because you can't control yourself. You're a little kid. Right. Now you're older, you're in charge. So that means the beginning of adulthood. Now, someone who's at the beginning of adulthood understands that there are ramifications for their actions. Right? If I'm going to, if let's say my mother says she wants to save a cake for Shabbos and I eat it on Thursday night, I know that there are ramifications for my actions. There'll be no cake, right? And then they're not going to be happy. Right? That's not the same as a person who's now 20 or 21 years old, who has to be responsible to the entire community and to himself in a full manner. So here the father is saying that my son now is on his own when it comes to his punishment and his reward for doing mitzvahs. It doesn't mean I don't support him. It doesn't mean he doesn't live with me and I'm not responsible for him. Financially, I am. I mean, what 13-year-old kid can take care of himself and still become something? Right? It's not really that easy. Okay, so it goes on about the counting. At 20 years old, as I said, so he says here that each person, I'm just looking at the English for a minute, and you shall be one man from each tribe, a man who is the leader of each father's household. That is, they're going to pick the prince who's going to be in charge of each tribe. Then, so these are the names of the men who stood for you, right, who are going to become the heads of the tribes. And they're going to go through the names of all of the different people who headed the tribes, rather than each person, right, of all the tribes. They're telling you who they are. So it says, for instance, it says, Elitzur, it says, for Ruvain, the tribe of Ruvain, Elitzur ben Shteor. He is the head of the tribe of Ruvain. For the tribe of Shimon is Shalumiel ben Surishadai. For the tribe of Yehuda is Nachshon ben Aminadab. So you have now the leaders of each tribe, right, are being singled out first before you count the people within the tribe. So that's what they're telling us. Now, each one of these people, they're princes. They're given privileges, but here's what we learn, that with privilege comes responsibility. Without privilege, responsibility is really torture, and without responsibility, privilege is useless. It doesn't work. In other words, here they're the princes. A prince has certain privileges. He's the prince. He can tell people what to do. He's in charge. Right? He's going to certainly have a bit more of a physically respected life than the others. On the other hand, if he takes his job seriously, he's going to carry a lot of responsibility on his shoulders, because he has to make sure that everyone is taken care of and acts correctly. And if they aren't taken care of or they don't act correctly, it's his problem. Right? So with the responsibility and the privilege comes the privilege, and with privilege comes responsibility. It's an important thing, even when we raise our children. We want to give our children privileges, right, to do something. They are now responsible for it. For instance, the example I've used before with the two kids who want to cross Bathurst Street to go to the mall. Right? They decide they want to go buy an ice cream or something. They want to go to the mall. And the parents, are concerned that they're going to cross Bathurst Street. It's a busy street. So they tell the two kids, if you go to the corner and you press the button and you wait for the light to change, you look both ways and you cross with the light, we'll let you go. But the parents realize that one of their kids is very responsible, and one of them is this very, he acts without thinking. So the one who's very responsible, regardless of his age, they're going to tell him, go ahead, you can go, just check the light and make sure. The other one, even if you tell him to check the light, he's not going to do it. So you can't let him go. Right? You can't give him the privilege of going to the mall because he can't do the responsibility of doing it safely. The other one can. Right? In fact, that's why if the one who you think can't really do it goes and he runs across the street, right, without looking, you punish him because you want him to learn how to act, but you expected it. You expected he was going to do that. If the one who's very responsible suddenly runs across the street without looking, his punishment will be much more severe because he can do it and he's not even exerting himself. Right? So you see that each one of them are judged differently, and but the parent has to look at each child's strengths and weaknesses. Right? And that's really how the idea of privilege and responsibility works with us. So here we have all of them. We go through all of the different ones. Some of the leaders become quite famous in the rest of the Torah, and already up until now, like Nachshon, the son of Aminadav. Nachshon was known, he was the one that when the Red Sea split, it says nobody wanted to go in. Like they said, what, are you crazy? Yeah, we're going to go in, it's going to close, we're all going to drown. How do we know that the Red Sea is going to stay open for us? Right? Before it split even, God tells Moshe, go into the water. Go in. Right? I'll save you. And they're walking into an ocean, a sea. There's no splitting of the sea. It hasn't split yet. So nobody wants to go in because they're going to drown. So Nachshon, because of his firm belief and his actualized belief in God, right, he says, no, I'm going. And he was the first one to go in. And it says that he had to go into the water until it covered his nose. Right? In other words, it was a point of no return. He was at the point where he couldn't breathe. At the moment his nose got covered by the water, God split the sea, and because of his efforts, everybody was saved. So we see here he's a very important fellow. He's also, later on in the story of the spies, one of the spies who was considered to be righteous, who tried to stop the rest of them from saying bad things. And so it's the same person. And then we go through all the rest of them, and we get another very famous one that we'll get to know a lot, and that is Yoshua ben Nun. Right, he's also there, and Yoshua, right, we know later on takes over the leadership of the entire Jewish people from Moshe. That's his job. He also is one of the spies, just like Nachshon, who goes into Israel and tries to get everyone to come back with the right story. So he's very well known. So those are all of them. And then it goes on and it starts counting all of the people. And you can see, I'm not going to go through all the numbers, every one of the tribes and all of the numbers that there are. And it concludes by saying on 730 and 731, these are the countings that Moshe, Aaron, and the leaders of Israel counted, 12 men, 1 man for his father's household, were they were all the countings of the children of Israel according to their father's house, from 20 years of age and up. Everyone who goes out to the legion, goes out to the war, all their countings were 603,550. So there were 603,550 men above the age of 20, below the age of 60, who were among the Jewish people. Right? However, that didn't include the tribe of Levi. The tribe of Levi were not counted. And there's a number of reasons for that. First is the tribe of Levi represents the concept I told you about how a person is able to change. The tribe of Levi represents God to the Jewish people. They were the ones who served God for us and with us. So the Levi has within them a subset called Kohen. Right? There's within every Kohen is a Levi because they come from the tribe of Levi, but they came from a part of the tribe of Levi that comes from Aaron, who was a Levi. The rest of them, right, come from the tribe of Levi, and so that they are considered people who have more of a commitment innately to the people. In fact, as I said before, that all the other Jews were counted at 20 years old. The tribe of Levi are counted at 30 days old. And the big difference is that a Levi's entire life, from the moment he's able to think, right, is committed to helping the Jewish people, right, working in the temple, assisting in all different ways that specifically a Levi can assist. That's his entire life. So even from the time he's 30 days old, everything he learns is learning to be able to give himself to the people, not just to himself. The other ones, they don't do that until they're 20. Now, why Levi does it from that point on is because their entire life was dedicated to helping others, to leading the Jewish people in a spiritual manner. That was their goal, their role. And therefore, from the time they were 30 days old, they were preparing for it. So from the time of 30 days old, they're counted. Even though the other ones are not counted until they start doing it, that's when they're 20. But the tribe of Levi was expected from the time they were 30 days old. What it really means is that from the time they were born. And the reason they say 30 days in the Torah is that according to Jewish law, a baby under the age of 30 days old is still in a highly precarious situation as far as living. A baby under the age of 30 days old has a higher chance of dying than after 30 days old. Right? Because there can be many things that malfunction, right, within the baby as it's being developed, and sometimes immediately the child dies, and sometimes it takes time, right, from whatever sickness or flaw that they have. So we don't consider a baby to be a fully responsible human being until they're 30 days old. That doesn't mean that they're not human. Under 30 days old, they are, and we are responsible to them like anyone else. But for instance, if God forbid a baby dies under 30 days old, one doesn't sit shiva for them because they weren't fully finished until they hit 30 days. I mean, therefore, you see that it really is saying that the tribe of Levi, from the moment they're born, are considered to be working on behalf of the Jewish people. They say 30 days because of the law. So here, if you look in the bottom of 730 and 731, we see that Hashem tells Moshe, "You shall not count the tribe of Levi, and you shall not take a census of them among the children of Israel. Now you appoint the Levites over the tabernacle." Right? And when the tabernacle journeys, the Levites take it down, and when it encamps, they will erect it, and an alien who approaches them shall die. Right? So at this point, the tribe of Levi is not being counted at all. Right? They're still left uncounted, but their job is given, which is they're in charge of the spiritual aspects. They're the assistants to the Kohen, to the priest. The priest has his work to do, like he's going to shech the cow. He's going to slaughter a cow as a sacrifice. The Levi's job is to bring the cow. He's to make sure the knife is there, that it's clean, that everything's ready. The Levi's job was to erect the Mishkan as it traveled in the desert and to take it apart as they were about to move to the next place. They were sort of the assistants to the Kohen. Right? In fact, if you know people with the name Siegel, the Siegel is an abbreviation, a Hebrew abbreviation, for Sagan LeKohen, which means the assistant of the Kohen. And virtually anyone named Siegel was usually a Levi, because they were an assistant to the Kohen. That's what the name meant in Hebrew. So you find that a few times, but that's one example. Now, if we start looking on 733 at the next chapter, is now telling us that Moshe is telling the Jewish people how they should camp as they travel through the desert. In other words, you've got 12 tribes, right? How do these 12 tribes, can they just like anybody stay anywhere? And, you know, we're the Jewish people. We all, you know, we're all related to each other, so maybe we could just stay wherever we want, you know, and as long as we're together with the people. Or do we have to stay by our tribe? Do we have to stay by our family? Like, how do we camp? So here Moses is telling them that you stay by your tribe. Each tribe had a different place, right, around, and the center was the temple, right? So every tribe had a place around it, in the front, on the side, in the back, and that was their job, to stay when it stopped, and they would rest and camp somewhere. Also, when they traveled in the same formation, right? So lots of times people ask, like, where does this formation come from? Like, why does one go in the front and one in the back? Right? Why does that happen? So we find an interesting thing that this is directly correlated to another piece of the Torah that we learned much earlier, which was at the death of Jacob. When Jacob dies, right, he has 12 sons. Now he wants to bless them. So we would think that he would bless them one at a time. Bring in one, bless him, he'd go out, the next one would come in. Because you don't want everyone to hear what the other one's getting as a blessing, because they'll get jealous, right? But he doesn't do that. He brings all 12 in, and they stand around his bed in a specific formation, and he blesses each one separately, with the other ones all standing there. And the commentaries say that why does he bring them in like that? That they should be in such a way. So it says that because if in a time of real pain, which is when their father dies in front of them, right, it's really painful. If they can have their father's wishes as to how to establish themselves and where to be around his bed, and to understand that it doesn't make you more important or less important, but there is something specific about you that you should be at this spot, by his head, by his right hand, whatever it is, then that's where you should be. And that you should know that each one of you are different. That's why they were blessed in front of each other. And that each one of you are equally loved and equally important, but you're all different. Right? If he would separate them and only bless one at a time and the other ones didn't see it, it causes suspicion. Why shouldn't I hear what my brother is getting for a blessing? Well, because he's getting twice what I get. Because he's more important than me. Because my father never really liked me that much. Because my mother was closer to my father than his mother was. Right? All kinds of reasons go through one's mind as to why their father does what he does. So Yaakov actually did something smarter, which is he brought them all in, and he blessed each one of them differently based on who they were in front of all the others. And that was to teach them that we are not supposed to be uniform. Right? We're not all supposed to be the same. We have the same set of laws, like the halachas, right, that we live, the mitzvahs. We have all those the same. We have goals are the same, but one person might be artistic, another one might sing, another one might be strong, another one might be a great engineer, another one could be good with people, another one is good with money. Every one of you have your strengths and weaknesses, and you have to use your strengths, and you have to lessen your weaknesses in your service of God and yourselves and your family. And therefore, each one of you is important. So what Yaakov was saying, which is carried over into this spot, is that we have unity as a Jewish people, but our unity only comes through diversity. Right? We don't want everyone to be the same. We want everyone to unite, but we want everyone to be themselves. So some people are one way and some are another way, and you have to make sure that those who are in a specific way, right, that they will be able to flourish in their way, and not told, we don't do that. We don't believe in art. We don't believe in music. We don't believe in poetry. We don't believe in, spending your time doing this, this, and this. We all have to be the same. And this has been one of the problems throughout Jewish history, because we have to weigh that against the ability of providing services. Because if you have kids, and each kid is taught that he's different, and he has different strengths and weaknesses, and then you try to fit them into a school where the common denominator in the school is that they have a similar philosophy, their parents come from a similar background, so that they send them to a certain school, what happens is that you try to create cookie-cutter kids, where they're all the same. Because it's too hard for a teacher to have 30 kids in a class, and each one is different. How am I supposed to teach 30 kids, each one separately? Like, I can't do that. So you try to find common denominators between them, and you teach in that common way. And but what often happens, sadly, because of our restraints, financial restraints and services and so forth, we are unable to really do that as well as we should. And that's why you find a number of children who get frustrated and leave. They stop being part of the observant community because they wanted to express themselves in certain ways and they weren't given that ability. Or they learned in certain ways, right? Some people learn orally and some people learn visually, right? People learn in different ways. And if you're in a school where they teach you to learn like by my writing it on the board, right? And you really don't learn that way as well. You learn more through experience. You're not going to do as well. But we don't have the ability to do it. Even the public schools, which certainly have more ability, they're broader, they have more money, they can do it more than we can, but even they can't do it. You can't have a separate school for every kid. But you can make it possible for a kid to have the self-worth and the self-dignity to believe that they're special and they have special gifts that no one else has, and everybody else is special with their special gifts, and we have to use our special gifts in the service of God. And we don't want to stifle that and make them all the same, right? Black clothes and white shirts and the same beliefs and the same practices and the same everything. And then when they grow up, right, they become frustrated because whatever things that they wanted to do becomes, disappears, right? If this person, would have been an amazing scientist, but he went to a school that didn't give him the tools to be an amazing scientist, he'll never be an amazing scientist because he doesn't know how, right? He'll be stifled. That is an important aspect. That what happens here is that when God tells Moshe to assemble the Jewish tribes around the temple, it is the exact same order that Jacob said to assemble his sons around his deathbed, so that they understood that if it was in a time of trouble when our father Jacob was dying and he was able to put us there so we would all have peace, and it was all because he cared for us, so too we have the same role today in the desert with God telling us to do the same thing. That shows us the significance of why they were placed there, and it was so there shouldn't be problems, but they should all know that they're different, right? Each tribe was different, each person was different, and they should know that, and they, rather than fight each other over their differences, they should celebrate their differences. This concept can't be overstated. It's, we speak about this here a lot, the importance of realizing each individual's abilities and to not try to subjugate somebody into being like a cookie cutter where they all look the same and act the same and think the same. That's not what Judaism is. The outside world thinks we are. They think like the Orthodox Jews are all the same. They all believe the same thing and act the same way and do the same things. And while we believe the same thing, we express it in very different ways. And as long as it's within the boundaries of halacha, it's fine. Now, you can be an artist, you can be an accountant, you can be a scientist, you could be a homemaker. Whatever it is you want to be that you're going to excel at, that's going to express your personality, that's what you should be. Right? And that's what the message is here. I'm not making you into just the people. You're not all mixed up. You're all going to be by your tribe. Each tribe is different. And each tribe has a different place around the temple, right, the Mishkan, in order so that you should realize that each one of you are important and close, but each one of you are different. Some of you are in the front, you lead from the front. Some are on the side, you lead from the side. Some lead from the back. That's how it's going to be. And that's why this is such an important message as to how they travel through the desert. Okay, so that's what begins here, where Hashem tells Moshe, the children of Israel shall encamp, each man by his banner according to his insignias. Now, they're saying that how does he know where to go? Of course, we know from the story of Jacob, but it says that they used banners. Banners are flags. They had flags. We've probably seen pictures of the flag from different tribes with a symbol on it. But it's a weird thing. Like, why did they have flags? In fact, the Midrash says that the Jewish people complained to Moshe, they complained to God that we don't have flags. All the other nations of the world have flags, and we don't have flags. So if we don't have flags, right, we're missing something. So first is like, who cares? You have a flag, you don't have a flag. Then second is if you have a flag, what does it mean? What does a flag say? Right? In general, we understand a flag is usually a sign of some type of nationalism. Right? You have a flag for your country, a flag for your baseball team, a flag for different things that you consider, that you identify with, and you're basically saying that I'm a part of this. Right? So that flag is to the individual as symbol of who they are. So if I wanted to say I'm an enthusiastic football fan, so therefore I'm going to have like the New York Giants flag outside my house, because that's what that's how I identify. I'm just lucky I know that there is such a thing as the New York Giants. That's only because they were in cartoons. But the fact is that you have to identify, that people identify. So the Torah is saying that we identify with the flags, that actually the Jewish people went to God and they complained, we don't have flags. Right? So God, and they said, we don't have flags, but the angels have flags. You see, the angels have flags, so we want flags too. So God gave each tribe a flag with a symbol on that flag that represented who they are. right? And it represents things based on the history of the people, and that the flag was actually a sign to rally around, but in this case for a positive thing, for something that showed each flag is different, each person is different, each one has to excel, each one has to become themselves as a part of a team. Right? I'm an individual. I'm part of a family. I'm part of a tribe. I'm part of the Jewish people. Each one of those things I'm unique, and each one of those things I blend in both ways. And that's what it's telling us. Right, so it goes through that whole arrangement. And it goes on for pages because it tells you each one and who they were and what and where they stood and how many people there were. Then when we get to 739, we count the Levium. If you look like on verse 11 on 739, Hashem speaks to Moshe, "Behold, I've taken the Levites from among the children of Israel in place of every firstborn, the first issue of every womb among the children of Israel, and the Levites shall be mine, for every firstborn is mine. On the day I struck down every firstborn in the land of Egypt." Right, so here is where we find that Hashem says He's sanctifying the firstborn. Right, that means that we have an idea in many different things that the firstborn to the womb of a woman or a female animal is holy. We have it with a donkey, we have it with some animals, but we also have it with people. That's, you know about the ritual of Pidyon Ben, where you redeem your child. So what are you really doing? What really happens is as follows, that God says the firstborn child is mine. That is, every family had a firstborn child. If they were fortunate, they had a firstborn son. Right? Fortunate for this specific thing. Why? Because the firstborn son's job was they were dedicated to the temple. They belonged to God, so to speak. That was the representative of the family to the temple. So he would be like the Kohen. He would go in and do the work of the Kohen. Right? That's what would be his job. Right? What later happened was that there was a failure with the sin of the golden calf and so forth, that God appointed Kohanim to be Kohanim, right, rather than the firstborn. But because it was supposed to be the firstborn, and the Kohanim are coming and they're doing your job for you, so then you have a responsibility to buy yourself back from the Kohen. In other words, I'm supposed to do this job, and because I can't do the job, that guy's doing it for me, right? So I owe him my life. I mean, he's doing my job. I can't do it. So therefore, my parents are going to buy me back from him. Basically, he owns me because I'm supposed to do what he does. So they buy me back. That's the Pidyon Ben. You're redeeming your firstborn child, or firstborn son, from the Kohen. Now, I'm a Levi. I'm not a Kohen, but I didn't have to do that. And that's because Kohen is a part of Levi. Right? Like I said before, Kohen is a subset. It's not a tribe. Every Kohen is a Levi. That's the tribe they're in. But not every Levi is a Kohen. Within the tribe of Kohen, you had Aaron. Inside the tribe of Levi, you had Aaron. And Aaron's children were Kohens. But Moshe's children were not. Right? They were Levis. So, and all the other ones were Levis. So that one group were Kohanim. The rest were considered Levis. So if a person is a Levi, they would sort of be buying themselves from themselves, because a Kohen is also, right? So a Levi is special. He's dedicated to God, and therefore all Levis, right, they don't have to be bought back from the Kohen. They don't have such a thing. They're always dedicated to serve God forever, right? This is like the Kohen doesn't buy himself back. He's dedicated to serve God. That's his job, and that's what they do. And here it tells us the names of the children. Right? It has the names of the next generation of the leaders of that tribe of Levi. I didn't go through all the other ones and the other tribes, but these ones I find very interesting. If you look in verse 17, it says that these are the sons of Levi by their names: Gershon, Kahas, and Merari. Right? And then it tells you each one of them who their children were. So Gershon, Kahas, and Merari, right, they mean something. The names mean, like all names mean something. So these names are very interesting because the tribe of Levi, they were different than the rest of the tribes when we were slaves. The tribe of Levi was always considered to be the priestly tribe by the Egyptians even. So they didn't make the tribe of Levi work like they made the others work, like as slaves. The tribe of Levi were like the priests. So it was their job to inspire the people. So the Egyptians saw them as having a role in inspiring the people to keep the people working. But the Levites saw their role as keeping the people attached to God. Right? So they were not working. They were free. So you'd say, if they were not working, that one tribe, and all the other tribes of the Jews were horrible work as slaves and being killed and being subjugated, right? You'd think that they should be happy. They're not, it's not happening to me. The fact was they weren't happy. They were very much in pain over the fact that their brothers were in pain. And therefore, the one most, I think, deepest way of expressing it was that they named their children after the pain of their brothers. So you have three here. So it says Gershon comes from Ger Ha'is Eretz Shalolem. Gershon means we were strangers in a strange land. Kahas comes from the idea of striking, that they struck the Jewish people in the teeth. They got hit. So there was like kahas. It was the pain of my brothers. I remember the pain of my brothers in that way. And Merari comes from the word mar, meaning bitter. That they also, he was named that because of the bitter lives that the brothers, the non-Levis, had. So here you understand that a leader, in order to be a good leader, has to feel the pain of the people who come to him. You can't be a good leader without it. This is an argument I have with some people in the medical profession. I understand why they say what they say. They say that, of course, you have to distance yourself from your patients because you won't be able to handle it. Right? You'll fall apart. The guy comes in, he's got all these sicknesses, and at the same time his wife's got sicknesses, and he doesn't have a job, and all this is going on. Like, if you start feeling for everybody, you're not going to be able to do surgery. You're not going to be able to help them because you're too emotionally involved with that person. So they have what they do is they create a distance between them and the patient, right? So that they don't see them that way, right? That's like why when they first do surgery, right, many doctors will get sick when they do surgery. After a while, they don't. They get used to it because they start to distance themselves from the person. It's not a person. I'm helping a person, but at the moment that I'm doing it, it's not a person. That way I don't feel that pain. I've always said that I can't help anybody unless I feel their pain. If somebody comes in to see me, if they start telling me, life's so tough, I gotta give up my Rolls Royce, I can only have a Lexus now. Right? It's hard for me to feel that pain. Right? So I won't be as effective a counselor as I will when somebody comes in and they start telling me that they're not getting along with their spouse, their children are having a problem, somebody is sick in their family, right? They've lost their job and they might lose their home. I've had many times where the person coming to see me has to console me. Like, I'll start crying, right? Now, it happens to make them feel better, right? Not because they made me sad, but because they know I'm associated with them. But that's just, I believe, is necessary. If I can't do that, I have to quit. I can't do it. I can't help anybody. Now, I know some people in the medical profession, primarily in the mental health area, who do what I do, but they don't. They try to distance themselves to some extent because I know at one point I was doing it to such an extent that I got depressed. I got medically depressed, and I had to go see a doctor to be treated. It was only for a month, but I was astute enough to know that it had happened to me. I had so many people with so many problems that I was feeling their problems that it affected me, which is exactly what the doctors say will happen. And they're right. I know it'll happen, but I say it's worth it. I can't help anybody unless I do it. I just try not to get sick. Right? Thank God it only happened once in my whole life, but hopefully not again. But you see that you can only have an effect. You see here, the tribe of Levi was saying the same thing. We're not being made into slaves. We're not being beaten by Egyptians working 20-hour days. We're able to study and to learn and to teach and to inspire people. But we can't inspire them. We can't help our brothers unless we feel for them. And they felt for them, and they showed how they felt for them by taking their most important possession, which is their children, and naming their children for the pain that their brothers were experiencing. And that's an extremely important idea. And I think it's an important idea for us in every way. It's one of the reasons why, if an organization wants to raise money and they get you to come, they show you a video with all the sad things that that happen, that your money can help, right? Sick children or neglected older people, right? And you see this, and it moves you, right? And you want to help, right? That's how we are. Jews are merciful people. People, hopefully are merciful, but we're known as being merciful, and therefore we this can be used against us, but it's certainly an important thing that if you want to help someone, right, you have to feel for them. And not only that, even if people come to me a lot with the idea of reprimanding somebody. You have somebody who knows how to do the right thing, and they're doing the wrong thing, whatever it is. And another adult, that somebody comes into shul and they take somebody else's food or somebody's stuff, or we're making a kiddush and we want to announce it and have everything really pretty, and they go in and take food beforehand, right? Things like that. They don't mean bad. They know that in 5 minutes they can have it anyways, right? But they're acting inappropriately. So someone will say, I want to tell them, they shouldn't do it, and they should act correctly. And the Torah says you're supposed to. But you won't be effective unless the person you're telling knows you care for them. If they don't think you care for them, it's like, how back in the day when people smoked, right? And it was starting to change. So you'd walk down the street smoking a cigarette, and that person would come up to you and say, you shouldn't smoke. It's terrible. It'll kill you. So what do you say to that guy? Oh, you're right. No one ever said that to me before. I'm going to quit right now. Nobody did that. Nobody in the world ever does that. Why? Because you're not going to listen to him. Who are you to tell me what to do? You don't know me. You don't know nothing about me, right? Well, he knows that 100% of the people who smoke cigarettes have a negative effect. He knows that. And he cares. So he's telling you. But when we're on the receiving side, we don't see it that way. The only way that we're going to accept somebody's reprimanding us is if we know that they care about us, right? And so I tell that to people, that if you want to try to help that person get better, if you don't know their name of their spouse, the names of their kids, if you don't know anything about them, then you don't know them well enough to do it. It ain't going to work. It just won't work. You can stand on your head. You won't help. All you do is make an enemy. And that's the same idea. You have to feel the pain of the other person. You have to know the other person so that they know you care, right? And that's why I think a rabbi who can't do that is an ineffective rabbi, because he has to be able to meet with people and to let them know he really cares, right? Because I tell people all the time, I haven't seen you. Where have you been?
Can you call Hadassah at 210? Thank you.
And it's usually because I miss them. But people will often think, oh, he's just pushing me, I should come, right? But no, it's not. I miss them, so I want them to come. Not because I'm saying that you should come because I get more points if you come. It's because you get more points and I care about you, right? That's really what we're doing. And that's not me. I'm not anyone special. Lots of people do that, right? We all do that to some extent, but we don't realize that it's actually something the Torah wants us to do. And that's what we see right here. Well, rather than going on with the rest of it, I mean, there is things to say. We should take a few minutes to talk about Shavuos, since it's coming up in a few days. It's funny, of all of the holidays, if you ask a Jewish person who's coming to be more observant or is not observant, or many people who come from very good Jewish homes, but they don't really know Torah, if you ask them to tell you the major holidays of the year, they will not say Shavuos. Shavuos is not only they don't say it because they think it's minor, they don't even know it exists. I don't think I knew it exists for the first number of years of my life, that there was such a thing as Shavuos. And I knew, everyone knows Pesach. Right? No one doesn't know Pesach. Most people know about Sukkot. They may not know all the rules. They know about Hanukkah. Right? Many know about Purim, but Shavuos is like the least known of all the holidays. And yet, it is on the par with Pesach. It's the same level. Pesach, Shavuos, Sukkot. Those are the three major pilgrimage holidays of the year. So why don't we remember it? I believe that the reason that we don't remember it is because, is what the Rambam says. There's nothing to do. On Pesach, you've got a lot to do. Getting ready for Pesach is enormous. On Pesach itself, you've got like a dozen things you got to do. You got to eat this, you got to eat that, you got to say this, you got to stand up, you sit down, you got to lean this way, that way, eat some more, right? You got to do all of these things, right? As much work as it is, I would stick my neck out and say it's probably one of the most favorite holidays that people have. even though they complain and it's hard work, right? How many people have the opportunity to go out of town, right, and to go to a hotel and won't do it? They won't go, right? Because they miss the cleaning. The first year they'll all go. Everyone does it. I did it once. I had a year where I was in between, so I had a job, but my job didn't require me to be there for holidays. So I was asked to speak at one of these places, so I went. And I thought, this is great. Like, my wife doesn't have to prepare anything. I don't have to prepare anything. We just have to show up. And then right, and I have to speak a couple of times every day, and then I can go do stuff and be like a regular person, right? and I had a nice time. But it's like it's like I fell asleep before Pesach and I woke up after Pesach. Like, I missed it. I missed the work. I missed the effort. I missed the, throwing this away and finding that and doing this and lighting the candles and doing all the stuff that we do. Right? On Shavuos you have nothing. There's nothing. There's no special mitzvah on Shavuos. Staying up all night and learning is not a mitzvah. It's a custom. And it's a nice custom. Cheesecake, as much as I wish it was a mitzvah, is not a mitzvah. It's only a custom. Right? When it boils down to it, the Rambam says any holiday that does not have an action is forgotten by people. Right? People forget it. Right? Because they will only remember something that has an action with it. It has something to do with it. And the most beloved holidays are the ones with more actions. And Shavuos has no action, and people forget it. However, Shavuos is an extremely significant and important holiday. It's one of the 3 most significant holidays of the year. It's as significant as Pesach. I mean, it's the culmination. The reason that we came out of Egypt was to get the Torah. On Shavuos, we got the Torah. That's an enormous thing. So we need to understand that even though that's the case, then what is it that we're supposed to do? Like, okay, whatever I told you, God knows this, and I'm not coming up with anything new, so how come he didn't give us something to do? Right? So the whole idea is that Shavuos in the Torah is called Atzeres. Atzeres comes from the word to stop. Otzer. Like, if you go to Israel, you have stop signs. Stop. Right? Otzer is to stop. And this is Atzeres. So what does it mean? It means on Shavuos, you know what you do on Shavuos? You don't do what you would do normally. That's what you do on Shavuos. You do something special. That is what we normally do. You'll either do the mitzvahs peculiar for the day, or you'll go to work. You do whatever it is that you do. No, on this day is the day of understanding that the purpose of the world has happened. Right? When the Torah was given, everything up until this point in history was only done for this moment, and everything in the future is only going to happen because of this moment, because this is the day we got the Torah. The Torah is the blueprint. It's the instruction manual for life. Now, people say, oh, there's no instructions to be a parent. You have to have instructions to make a desk, instructions to turn on your radio, but there's no instructions to be a parent. But there is. That's called the Torah. The Torah tells you how to be a parent. It tells you how to be a spouse. It tells you how to be a good person. It tells you how to live. It tells you the purpose of life. The Torah is that. And our biggest problem is that we don't spend the time contemplating that, understanding that. Our lives are too fast. You ever notice, like, you'll get people that go to a doctor's office and they have to wait. The first few minutes they're there, they just sit there. The first thing they do next is they pull out their phone. And they start going through all their messages, and then all their text messages, and then all their games, and all their stuff on their phone. Why? Because it's hard for us to have our mind empty, but it's also hard for us to be thinking about serious things all the time. So we immediately go to look at that. That's why they have magazines in there, right? Because that's what you're going to do, read a magazine. But the idea is that our mind, it doesn't like to be empty. It likes to have things in it. We want to use our mind for things. And we don't take the time to stop and to think about something serious. We receive the Torah on this day, so our job on this day is to stop and realize you have just been given the cure to every bad thing in the world. Anything you can imagine, the cure is in this book. Now you use the book. You're going to be able to have a much better life and a much better purpose for life, for you and for others. But it's up to you. You've got to do it. You can't just come up with it on your own. You have to use the book. So Shavuos is the day that the mitzvah of the day really is this idea of contemplating, of realizing that the purpose of what we're doing was achieving this moment. We got the Torah. That God wrote the Torah before he created the world, and he wanted to give the Torah, and he had to pick the right people to give it to, who would be able to stand up to the world, no matter what they did to them, and keep saying, this is what's right, this is what's right, this is what's right. There's nothing else but this is what's right. And they'll beat you up and they'll kill you and they'll chase you around, but this is what's right. And that was the Jewish people. And that's what we got on Shavuos. Now, there's lots of details and things that we can study about the story of how we got the Torah and what happened when we got the Torah and why different things happened when we got the Torah. That all adds to it. But the bottom line is, you're supposed to have a holiday where you're not sitting there measuring your matzah. You're not sitting out in a sukkah making sure that there's no branches over your head. You are contemplating the purpose of why we're here. And that's what Shavuos does. It gives us that ability. And therefore, it's sad that human beings will often allow themselves to forget it. But it is exactly the problem. Right? What's the big problem on Pesach? To eat chametz. What's the big problem for Shavuos? Right? Is to not use the time in a positive way to think about our purpose. Right? So what do? You forget it. You forget Shavuos. And that's what the world has done. They forgot Shavuos. Because they're doing the opposite. It's like somebody was telling me that some of the people that they're acquainted with who aren't observant were going on Facebook and taking pictures of themselves eating chametz. Right? They're not being evil. They don't know better. But they're, this is a great bun and this is a great pizza, and they would put themselves on there. Right? That idea is that they are showing. Right? There's something about Pesach, I don't understand it. Right? But it means I have to subjugate myself. I'm showing you I'm not going to do it. On Shavuos, the way you do that is by forgetting Shavuos. Therefore, it's our role to try to remember Shavuos and to use the holiday of Shavuos as a way to contemplate the purposes of why our life is here, why we have things like marriage, why we have children, why we have a role in the world, why we have the country, the land of Israel. All of these things are part of what we contemplate. So that's what Shavuos really does for us. So it's just a thought to conclude with. All right, and then next week we'll continue with, I believe, the longest parsha in the Torah. But it's a very good parsha because it's the longest parsha in the Torah. So I always used to say, Bar Mitzvah boys I felt bad for, right? However, it's really not so bad because it's the same thing 12 times, just changing names. It goes through all 12 tribes, and it tells you what they did, and they all did the same thing. The names are different. So if you memorize what they did, then it's just a matter of remembering the names. So what originally is the most difficult parsha, you'd think, because it's so long, it's not easy, but it's easier because it's repetitive. And we have to really see why it is repetitive. Okay? We'll talk about that.